You do not survive a kamikaze attack. This was not pessimism. This was not fear. This was mathematical certainty, calculated by the United States Navy's damage assessment teams in the spring of 1945. When a Japanese pilot aimed his aircraft, loaded with fuel and explosives, directly at your ship and detonated on impact, the physics were unforgiving. The kinetic energy of a diving aircraft, combined with hundreds of gallons of aviation fuel, created a blast that could penetrate steel armor, ignite ammunition magazines, and turn crew compartments into crematoriums. One kamikaze hit could cripple a destroyer. 2 hits would sink it. 3 hits guaranteed total loss. This wasn't theory. This was proven fact, written in the wreckage of dozens of Allied warships scattered across the Pacific. The USS Laffey, struck by 2 kamikazes off Okinawa, broke in half and sank in 5 minutes. The US Callahan, hit by a single suicide plane, capsized and went down with crew members. The USS Emmons, struck by 5 kamikazes, had to be scuttled by friendly fire because she was too damaged to save. The pattern was clear. The mathematics were undeniable. Destroyers, thin-skinned, lightly armored, built for speed rather than survivability, could not withstand sustained kamikaze assault. They weren't designed for it. No ship was. And in April 1945, as the Battle of Okinawa raged, the Japanese were throwing everything they had at the American fleet. Operation Kikusui, the floating chrysanthemum, sent waves of suicide aircraft against the invasion fleet in coordinated mass attacks. Hundreds of planes, thousands of pilots who'd been told their deaths would save the empire, an enemy that had weaponized desperation itself. American sailors on radar picket duty, destroyers stationed 50 miles north of Okinawa to provide early warning of air attacks, knew they were the first targets. The kamikazes would hit them before reaching the main fleet. It was a death sentence wrapped in a duty assignment. The survival rate for ships on picket duty was grim. Get hit once, you might make it. Get hit twice, you probably wouldn't. Get hit 3 times or more. No ship had ever survived more than 3 kamikaze hits and remained afloat. No ship had been tested beyond that limit until April 16, 1945, until USS Laffey, Radar Picket Station 1, 60 miles north of Okinawa, alone except for 4 support gunboats, faced a morning that would rewrite every rule the Navy thought it knew about survival. His name was Frederick Julian Beckton. He was 41 years old in the spring of 1945, a career naval officer from Micanopy, Florida, with a reputation for unflappable calm that bordered on the supernatural. His crew called him the Old Man, with genuine affection, not because of his age, but because of his steady presence. When things went sideways, when chaos erupted, when other men panicked, Beckton got quieter, more focused, almost serene. He'd been commanding USS Laffey for less than a year, but he knew his ship intimately. Every system, every weakness, every strength. The Laffey was a Sumner-class destroyer, 376 feet long, 2,200 tons, capable of 34 knots. She carried 6 5-inch guns, 12 40mm anti-aircraft guns, and 11 20mm cannons. On paper, she was one of the most modern destroyers in the Pacific Fleet. On paper, she was still a tin can floating in waters controlled by an enemy that had nothing left to lose. Beckton had seen what kamikazes could do. He'd been at Leyte Gulf. He'd watched ships burn. He'd seen pilots deliberately aim for the bridge, the command center, knowing that killing the officers would leave the crew leaderless and doomed. He understood that radar picket duty was a calculated sacrifice. The destroyers on the outer ring would absorb the first kamikaze waves, protecting the carriers and battleships closer to shore. Some of those destroyers would die so others could live. That was the deal. That was the mission. But Beckton had no intention of dying, and he had no intention of losing his ship. The context of April 1945 made survival unlikely. The Battle of Okinawa had been raging for 2 weeks. American forces had invaded the island, the last stepping stone before mainland Japan, and the Japanese response was ferocious. They couldn't stop the invasion on the beaches, so they targeted the ships supporting the landings. If they could sink enough carriers, enough transports, enough destroyers, they could cut off the American ground forces and turn Okinawa into a death trap. The kamikaze was their weapon of choice. Conventional bombing required skill, training, precision. Kamikazes required only desperation and a willingness to die. Japan had an unlimited supply of both. Pilots were given minimal training, enough to take off and aim at a target. They were told they were heroes. They were told their sacrifice would save Japan. They were loaded into aircraft, packed with explosives, and sent toward the American fleet in waves that blotted out the sky. And the radar picket destroyers stood between those waves and the invasion fleet. USS Laffey had been assigned to Radar Picket Station 1, the northernmost position, the most exposed, the most dangerous. She'd been on station since dawn on April 16th, 60 miles north of Okinawa, scanning the horizon with radar, providing early warning of incoming air attacks. 4 small support gunboats accompanied her: LCS 51, LCS 57, LCS 82, and LCS 116, essentially armored rafts mounting a few guns. Backup, but not much. The morning had been quiet. Too quiet. Beckton knew better than to relax. He'd ordered his crew to battle stations at 0600 hours, every gun manned, every damage control station ready, every sailor alert. He didn't know when the attack would come. He just knew it would. At 0827 hours, radar detected the first contacts. Bogies inbound from the north, multiple targets, speed and altitude consistent with kamikazes. Beckton picked up the intercom. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "All hands, this is the captain. We have multiple bogies inbound. Stand by for air action. Make every shot count. No theatrics, no speeches, just information and expectation." The crew understood. They'd trained for this. They knew the odds. They knew that in the next few hours, some of them would die. But they also knew their captain wouldn't quit, wouldn't panic, wouldn't abandon them. And that made all the difference. At 0830 hours, the first kamikaze appeared on the horizon, then the second, then the third, then dozens more, breaking through the cloud cover like sharks sensing blood, all converging on Radar Picket Station 1, all converging on USS Laffey. Beckton stood on the bridge, binoculars raised, watching the enemy formation approach. His executive officer turned to him, voice tight with tension. "Sir, we're going to need help. Should I call for CAP?" Combat Air Patrol, friendly fighters that could intercept the kamikazes before they reached the ship. Beckton lowered his binoculars. "Already requested. They're on their way. Until then, we fight." The first kamikaze dove, and the longest 80 minutes in naval history began. 0830 hours. The first kamikaze, a Mitsubishi Zero, breaks from the formation and rolls into a dive. Altitude, 8,000 feet. Distance, 4 miles. Airspeed, 300 knots and accelerating. Beckton's voice cuts through the bridge. "All guns. Target bearing 035, high angle. Fire when ready." The 5-inch guns open up first. The sound is apocalyptic. A hammering boom, boom, boom that shakes the entire ship. Shells arc upward, black puffs of flak exploding around the diving aircraft. The 40mm quad mounts join in, their faster rate creating a continuous thud, 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 thud. Then, the 20mm cannons, lighter, sharper, filling the gaps. The sky becomes a wall of steel and fire. The Zero keeps coming, 2 miles, 1 mile, half a mile. The pilot doesn't waver, doesn't break off. This is what he's been trained for, what he's accepted. Death in service of the Emperor. At 300 yards, a 5-inch shell detonates directly in the Boschutbun's Zero's path. The aircraft flies through the explosion, trailing smoke, parts of the wing torn away. But the engine is still running. The pilot is still alive, still diving. 150 yards. The 40mm find the mark. Rounds punch through the engine. Cowling, the fuselage, the cockpit. The Zero shudders, yours left. But momentum keeps it on course. 75 yards. Every gun on the starboard side is firing. The noise is beyond description. A roar that drowns out thought, that vibrates in your chest, that makes your ears bleed. Tracer rounds create solid streams of light converging on the diving aircraft. 50 yards. The Zero disintegrates, not crashes, disintegrates. The concentrated fire tears it into fragments that spray across the water, missing Laffey's stern by 20 yards. The explosion sends up a geyser of seawater that drenches the aft gun crews. First Kamikaze, destroyed. The crew has 3 seconds to celebrate before radar calls out multiple contacts, bearing 040, 055, 070. 8 bogies inbound, 4,000 yards. 8, at once. This is the tactic. Overwhelm the defenses. Even the best gun crews can only track so many targets. Something will get through. Beckton doesn't hesitate. Helm, left full rudder, all ahead flank. Get us maneuvering. The Laffey heels hard to port, her twin screws churning the ocean white. At 34 knots, she's fast for a destroyer, but kamikazes are faster. The only advantage is unpredictability. Constant course changes make it harder for pilots to aim. The 8 kamikazes split into pairs, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. North, northeast, east, southeast. The gun crews have to prioritize, have to choose which threats to engage first. Gun director control picks targets. Mount 51, take bearing 040. Mount 52, bearing 055. Mount 53, bearing 070. The 5-inch guns swivel, elevate, fire. The entire ship rocks with each salvo. Shell casings the size of fire extinguishers clatter onto the deck, rolling with the ship's movement. 2 kamikazes, both Zeros, dive from the northeast. The lead aircraft takes a direct hit at 1,000 yards, explodes mid-air, rains burning debris into the ocean. The wingman adjusts, keeps coming. At 500 yards, the 40mm chew through his left wing. The Zero rolls inverted, crashes into the water 200 yards off the port beam. 3rd and 4th kamikazes, destroyed. But while the portside guns were focused on those 2, the starboard side threats closed the distance. A Valdive bomber, slower than a Zero but more stable, better for precision attacks, comes in low, skimming the waves at 50 feet. This pilot knows what he's doing. He's staying beneath the optimal firing angle of the 5-inch guns, forcing the smaller caliber weapons to do the work. The 20mm crews track him, fire, miss. He's jinxing, subtle course corrections that throw off their aim. 400 yards, 300 yards, 200 yards. At 100 yards, a 40mm gunner named Robert Carr, 19 years old from Pennsylvania, leads the target perfectly. His burst catches the Val's engine. The cowling explodes, flames erupt, but the aircraft doesn't break off. The pilot is dead or dying. But the Val is locked on course, now a guided missile with a corpse at the controls. 50 yards. Becton sees it coming, sees that it's going to hit. His voice is ice calm. Brace for impact. The Val slams into Laffey's starboard side aft, just above the waterline. The explosion is white hot, a bloom of fire that engulfs the aft deckhouse. The blast wave throws sailors off their feet. Shrapnel tears through bulkheads. The aviation fuel, hundreds of gallons, splashes across the deck and ignites, turning the aft section into an inferno. First hit, 08:42 hours, 12 minutes into the short battle. Damage reports flood the bridge. Fire on the fantail. Mount 53 is offline. Casualties in the aft crew quarters. Becton doesn't flinch. Damage control. Get those fires under control. Mount 53 crew. Abandon your station if it's untenable. Mount 51 and 52. You're our aft coverage now. The fire parties are already moving. Men in asbestos suits dragging hoses, spraying foam and seawater onto the flames. The heat is incredible. Paint blisters and peels off bulkheads. Metal glows cherry red. Men work within feet of explosions, knowing that if the fire reaches the aft magazine, the entire stern will detonate. They fight the fire while more kamikazes dive. Fifth kamikaze, destroyed. A Zero attacks from dead ahead. This is the worst angle, the narrowest profile, the hardest shot. The forward 5-inch mount tracks it, fires 3 rounds. The first misses high, the second misses low. The third, fired at 800 yards, hits the Zero in the quad's cockpit. The aircraft explodes in a fireball that lights up the morning sky. 08:45 hours. Radar reports 6 more contacts inbound. Ammunition expenditure is becoming a concern. At this rate of fire, they'll run dry in 30 minutes. But stopping isn't an option. A Judy dive bomber comes in steep and fast from 11 o'clock high. The forward 40mm mounts engage at maximum range, 1,200 yards, trying to destroy it before it enters its terminal dive. Tracer fire converges. The Judy takes hits in the wings, the tail, but keeps coming. At 600 yards, it rolls into a 70-degree dive, aiming for the bridge. If it hits the bridge, command is gone. The ship becomes headless, doomed. Every forward gun fires. The noise is continuous thunder. Shell casings pile up in drifts around the gun mounts. Loaders are working so fast their hands blur, feeding ammunition into breaches that are almost too hot to touch. 400 yards. The Judy is streaming. Smoke, but still flying, still diving. The pilot committed beyond any possibility of pulling out. 200 yards. A 20mm gunner named Aristides Foutrides, 22 years old, from Lynn, Massachusetts, walks his fire up the Judy's fuselage, stitching rounds from tail to engine. At 100 yards, his tracers find the bomb. The 500-pound bomb the Judy is carrying detonates prematurely. The explosion is massive, far larger than the aircraft itself. The blast wave hits Laffey like a physical blow, knocking men down, shattering windows on the bridge. Burning wreckage rains onto the forward deck. A piece of the Judy's engine, 200 pounds of twisted steel, crashes through the deck and embeds itself in the mess hall. But the ship is still moving, still fighting. Sixth kamikaze, destroyed. 08:50 hours. The crew has been at battle stations for almost 3 hours. They've been under sustained attack for 20 minutes. They're exhausted, terrified, operating on adrenaline and training, but they're not breaking. Becton moves through the bridge, checking readiness, offering calm words. We're doing fine. Keep firing, keep moving. They can't sink us if they can't hit us. Radar. Multiple contacts. Port quarter. 3,000 yards. Looks like... Jesus, sir. It's a formation. I count at least 12 aircraft. 12. simultaneously. This is it. This is the killing blow. No ship can defend against 12 coordinated kamikazes. The math doesn't work. The geometry doesn't work. Something will get through. Multiple somethings. Beckton's response is a single word: engage. The 12 aircraft split into 3 groups of 4, attacking from port, starboard, and astern in a coordinated pincer. It's tactically brilliant. The ship can't run from all 3 directions at once, can't bring all guns to bear on all threats. Beckton makes an instant decision. Helm, hard right rudder, bring us around to bearing 180. We'll done. Put our stern to the port group, beam to the starboard group, and bow to the aft group. Maximum distribution of fire. The ship swings through a 180-degree turn, propellers screaming, wake churning white. The maneuver buys seconds, forces the pilots to adjust their approach angles, gives the gun crews fractionally more time. The port group attacks first. 4 zeros in tight formation, diving from 4,000 feet. Mount 52 engages. The first shell explodes beneath the lead zero, flipping it inverted. It spirals into the ocean. The second and third zeros take hits, but keep coming. The fourth breaks off, damaged or having second thoughts. Seventh and eighth kamikazes, destroyed. Ninth, evaded. But while the port guns were focused on that group, the starboard group closed in. 4 vals, attacking in a staggered sequence. The first one dives, forcing the guns to track it. The second follows 10 seconds later, using the first as a distraction. The third and fourth are 30 seconds behind, exploiting the reload times. It's textbook kamikaze tactics, and it works. The first val takes concentrated 40mm fire, disintegrates at 400 yards. The second val gets through the screen, crashes into the water, 10 yards off the starboard beam. So close the explosion lifts Laffey partially out of the water, bending plates, springing leaks. 10th kamikaze, destroyed but catastrophic near miss. The third val aims for the midship deckhouse. At 200 yards, multiple gun crews hit it simultaneously. The aircraft comes apart in flight. Wings separate from fuselage. Engine tears free. But the momentum carries the wreckage forward. It crashes onto the deck between Mount 51 and Mount 52, exploding on impact. Second direct hit. 08:54 hours. The explosion kills 4 sailors instantly. The 5-inch guns are undamaged, but the blast damages fire control systems. Now the gun crews are shooting manually, tracking by eye, calculating lead angles in their heads. The fourth val presses its attack while the ship is reeling from the second hit. Comes in from the starboard quarter, low and fast. The aft 20mm crews engage, but their mounts are jammed from the vibrations of the near miss. They're frantically clearing the weapons, hands moving desperately, but the val is closing. 300 yards, 200 yards. A 5-inch shell from Mount 51 hits it dead center at 150 yards. The val explodes so close to the ship that burning fuel splashes onto the deck, igniting fires in 3 locations. 11th kamikaze, destroyed. 08:56 hours. The aft group, 4 aircraft attacking from dead astern, uses the smoke from the fires as cover. They're barely visible through the black clouds, just silhouettes flickering in and out of view. The remaining operational guns fire blindly into the smoke, hoping to hit something. 1-0 emerges from the smoke. Already, trailing fire crashes into the ocean. Someone got lucky. 12th kamikaze, destroyed. But 3 are still coming. 3 vals line astern, using the lead aircraft to shield the following 2. The forward aircraft absorbs all the defensive fire, takes dozens of hits, shudders, burns, but doesn't break formation. It's already dead, but it's a flying shield, and the pilot knows it. At 300 yards, the lead valve finally succumbs, breaks apart, crashes. 13th kamikaze, destroyed. The second valve is immediately behind it. The guns swing to track, but the range is too close, the time too short. It slams into the starboard side amidships, punching through the hull at the waterline. The explosion floods two compartments instantly, killing everyone inside. Third direct hit, 08:58 hours. Laffey lists 5 degrees to starboard. Water is pouring in through a 10-foot hole in her side. Damage control teams are sealing bulkheads, shoring up supports, trying to isolate the Wadsons. Flooding. But the ship is wounded now, badly wounded, and the third valve is already diving. This pilot is good. He adjusts for the ship's list, aims for the bridge, the command center. If he destroys the bridge, he kills the captain, the executive officer, the helmsman. The ship becomes a floating coffin. Every operational gun targets him. Mount 51 fires at 800 yards. Miss. Mount 52 fires at 600 yards. Miss. The 40mm open up at 400 yards, throwing up a wall of steel that should be impenetrable. The valve flies through it, takes hits in the wings, the tail, the fuselage. Pieces fly off. Fire erupts from the engine. But the pilot holds course, 200 yards. Beckton stands on the bridge wing, watching it come. He doesn't duck, doesn't hide, just watches with that same eerie calm, calculating whether they'll survive the next 10 seconds. 100 yards. A 20mm gunner, Lawrence Delevsky, 20 years old, from Shenandoah, Pennsylvania, fires a burst that walks up the valve's nose, through the propeller, into the engine block. The engine seizes. The propeller stops. The valve loses airspeed instantly, drops 10 feet. Those 10 feet make all the difference. Instead of hitting the bridge, the valve hits the forward deckhouse, one level below. The explosion tears through the radio room, the chart house, the forward crew, berthing. 20-foot flames erupt through blown-out hatches. The blast kills 5 sailors and wounds 16 more. Fourth direct hit, 0900 hours, 30 minutes into the attack. 4 direct kamikaze hits, multiple near misses, fires raging in 3 locations, flooding in 2 compartments, ammunition running low, 71 casualties. And the attack isn't over. Understand what has just happened. In 30 minutes, USS Laffey has faced 50 individual kamikaze attacks. 50 aircraft, flown by men who've accepted death, all aiming for the same target. 14 have been shot down. 4 have scored direct hits. The rest have been damaged, driven off, or crashed attempting to reach the ship. But kamikaze tactics don't stop. They escalate. 0905 hours. Radar reports the largest formation yet. 20-plus contacts, inbound from multiple vectors. This is the culmination. Everything Japan has left in the area, thrown at one destroyer that refuses to die. Beckton's crew is beyond exhausted. Gun barrels are glowing red from continuous fire. Men are working with burned hands, bleeding ears, cracked ribs from the concussions. The ship is listing, burning, flooding. By every reasonable metric, they should abandon ship, let her sink, save themselves. Beckton keys the ship-wide intercom. His voice is hoarse from shouting orders, but it's still steady, still calm. Men of Laffey, we've been hit 4 times. We're still here. We're still fighting. I don't know how many more are coming, but I do know this. Every plane we shoot down is one that can't hit the carriers, can't hit the transports, can't kill the Marines on Okinawa. We hold this station. We keep fighting, and we do not abandon this ship. Not while I'm standing. Clear? From the guns, from damage control, from the engine room, from men who should be too tired and scared to respond. Aye, aye, sir. The 20 kamikazes attack in waves of 5, spaced 90 seconds apart. Tactically, it's perfect. It doesn't allow the gun crews to rest, to reload fully. to catch their breath. First wave, 5 Zeros in a V formation. They attack from the port bow, the hardest angle to defend because it requires the guns to track across the ship's centerline. Mount 51 and 52 fire together, creating a barrage pattern. 2 Zeros explode on initial contact. A third takes damage, pulls up, circles around for another pass. The fourth and fifth press through the flak. One crashes short, hits the water 30 yards from the port bow, detonates underwater. The shockwave buckles hull plates, seams split. More flooding begins. 15th Kamikaze, destroyed but damaging near miss. The other Zero aims for the forward superstructure. At 100 yards, it takes a 40mm burst through the cockpit. The pilot is killed instantly, but the aircraft continues on ballistic trajectory. It hits the forward 5-inch mount, Mount 51, dead center. Fifth direct hit, 0908 hours. The explosion destroys the gun mount completely. The entire turret is torn from its base, flipped backward, crushed. All 5 crew members are killed. The blast also damages the adjacent ammunition handling room, starts a fire that could reach the forward magazine within minutes. Laffey now has only 2 operational 5-inch guns. Her primary armament is crippled. 16th Kamikaze, destroyed after achieving hit. Second wave of 5 Vals, attacking from starboard in descending order, highest to lowest. It forces the gun crews to constantly adjust elevation, makes tracking harder. The first Val dives from 8,000 feet. Mount 52 fires 3 rounds. The third one hits, blows the Val's tail off. It tumbles, crashes. 17th Kamikaze, destroyed. The second and third Vals dive together, converging from slightly different angles. It's a deliberate tactic, force the defenders to split their attention. The second Val takes concentrated fire from multiple 40mm mounts, disintegrates at 500 yards. 18th Kamikaze, destroyed, but while the guns were focused on it, the third Val got through. Hits the ship at the waterline, starboard side aft. The explosion opens another massive hole, floods the aft engine room. 6th direct hit, 0910 hours. Laffey's speed drops from 34 knots to 25. She's losing power. The engineering crew is evacuating the flooded compartment, sealing it off, trying to keep the remaining engine operational. 19th Kamikaze, destroyed after achieving hit. The fourth Val targets the bridge again, comes in from high angle, steep dive, building speed. At terminal velocity, it's moving over 400 miles per hour. Every remaining gun fires. The sky fills with tracers, flak, smoke. The Val takes hits, dozens of hits, but doesn't break apart. The pilot is dead or unconscious, but the aircraft holds together just long enough. It hits the aft deckhouse, penetrates 2 decks, detonates in the crew berthing area. The explosion is muffled by the interior bulkheads, but the destruction is total. 30-foot flames roar up through the destroyed decks. 15 sailors are killed, 23 wounded. 7th direct hit, 0912 hours. 20th Kamikaze, destroyed after achieving hit. The 5th Val of this wave breaks off its attack run, damaged by flak or driven off by a burst of accurate fire. It circles away, trailing smoke. 21st Kamikaze, damaged and evaded. Third wave, 5 more aircraft, but Combat Air Patrol finally arrives. 4 F-6F Hellcat, fighters from a nearby carrier. They've been delayed by other attacks, other emergencies, but they're here now. The Hellcats tear into the attacking kamikazes at altitude before they can begin their dives. 2 Zeros are shot down 3 miles out. A third is damaged, limps away. The remaining 2 try to dive past the fighters. 22nd and 23rd Kamikazes, destroyed by Cap. 1 Zero makes it through, dives toward Laffey. A Hellcat follows it down, firing continuously. At 1,000 yards, the Zero takes a burst through the fuel tank. Explodes. 24th Kamikaze, destroyed by Cap. The last Zero pulls out of its dive, tries to escape. A Hellcat catches it at low altitude, shoots it into the ocean. 25th Kamikaze, destroyed by Cap. 09:15 hours. Fourth wave begins its approach. 5 more aircraft. But now they're facing not just Laffey's guns, but 4 Hellcats. The fighters intercept at altitude. 2 Kamikazes destroyed before they can distinguish. A third, damaged, breaks off. The fourth dives, takes fire from both the Hellcats and Laffey's guns, disintegrates at 2,000 yards. 26th through 29th Kamikazes, destroyed. The last Zero of this wave executes a perfect attack run, evades the Hellcats, flies through the flak pattern, stays on target despite taking multiple hits. At 300 yards, a 40mm burst hits its bomb. The bomb detonates under the aircraft, blowing it apart, but the wreckage continues forward on momentum, crashes onto the aft deck. 8th direct hit, though technically, the aircraft was already destroyed when it hit. 30th Kamikaze, destroyed but wreckage impacted ship. 09:18 hours. 5th wave, the last wave. 5 aircraft, but these are the desperate ones. The pilots who've watched 49 comrades die, who know their chances are zero, who are attacking anyway because orders are orders and honor demands it. The Hellcats are running low on ammunition, but they engage. 2 Kamikazes destroyed at range. A third, driven off. 31st and 32nd Kamikazes, destroyed by Cap. 33rd, evaded. The last 2 Zeros dive together, wingtip to wingtip, impossible to separate. The Hellcats can't engage both. Too risky, too close to each other. Laffey's guns fire. Mount 52 scores a direct hit on the portside Zero at 600 yards. It explodes, the blast damaging the starboard side Zero, but that Zero keeps coming. 34th Kamikaze, destroyed. The final Zero is streaming fire, shedding parts, clearly doomed. But the pilot holds course. At 200 yards, the aircraft is more fire than metal, more smoke than structure. The pilot should be dead. The aircraft should have disintegrated. At 100 yards, it finally breaks apart. The engine separates from the fuselage, tumbles into the water. The wings tear off, cartwheel away, but the fuselage, containing the pilot and the bomb, continues forward, hits the port side, amidships, detonates. 9th direct hit, 09:20 hours, 35th Kamikaze, destroyed, but achieved impact. And then, silence. No more radar contacts, no more dive, no more explosions. The battle is over. If you find this kind of forgotten history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage and sacrifice deserve to be told, and by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. 9:22 hours, 52 minutes after the first Kamikaze attack, 80 minutes of continuous battle. USS Laffey is still afloat. She shouldn't be. By every calculation, every precedent, every rule the Navy knows, she should be on the bottom. 9 direct Kamikaze hits, 4 bomb hits, 6 damaging near misses that opened her hull like a can opener. Fires in 5 locations, flooding in 4 compartments, no main armament, 1 engine. Listing 12 degrees, 31 crew dead, 72 wounded. But she's still floating, still moving, still fighting if she had to. Beckton surveys the damage from the bridge wing. His ship looks like it's been through a meat grinder. The forward deck is cratered and burned. The aft section is a twisted mass of metal. Holes in the hull at the waterline are pouring seawater into compartments that should keep her afloat. The superstructure is riddled with shrapnel damage. His executive officer approaches, face blackened with smoke, uniform torn. Sir, damage control reports we can keep her afloat. Engineering says we can maintain 15 knots on the remaining engine. We're going to make it. Beckton nods. Doesn't smile, doesn't celebrate, just nods. Get the wounded to sickbay. Get the fires under control. Get us heading back to the fleet. Aye, sir. Beckton remains on the bridge wing, watching his crew work. They're moving like zombies, exhausted beyond description, operating on fumes and willpower. But they're not quitting, not sitting down, not giving up. A signalman approaches. Sir, message from Fleet Command. They're asking for a status report. Beckton thinks for a moment. Then, send, Laffey operational, 9 direct hits, 31 KIA, proceeding to base. Request tugboat assistance. The signalman hesitates. Operational, sir. Are we sure about that? Beckton looks at him. We're moving under our own power. Our guns still work. We're still in the fight if needed. That's operational. Aye, sir. The message goes out. Across the fleet, officers read it and refuse to believe it. 9 direct hits. Impossible. No ship survives 9 direct kamikaze hits. It's a typo. A communications error. It's not. USS Laffey limps back to Higuchi anchorage at 15 knots, escorted by destroyers who can't quite believe she's still afloat. When she arrives, crews from other ships line the rails to watch her pass. Some salute, some stare in silence. All of them understand they're witnessing something that shouldn't exist, a ship that defied mathematics, physics, and fate. The official after-action report takes weeks to compile. The damage assessment is staggering. 9 confirmed kamikaze hits, 4 bomb hits from aircraft destroyed before impact, but whose ordnance detonated anyway, 6 near misses close enough to cause structural damage, over 300 separate shrapnel and bullet holes in the hull and superstructure, 3 5-inch gun mounts destroyed, 7 40mm mounts destroyed or damaged, 15 20mm mounts destroyed or damaged, flooded compartments containing over 100 tons of seawater, fires that consumed over 2,000 gallons of damage control foam, 31 dead, 72 wounded, 60% casualty rate. The Navy studies the report, tries to understand how she survived. The answer comes down to 3 factors. First, damage control. The crew fought fires and flooding with a ferocity that bordered on superhuman. They sealed bulkheads, shored up supports, pumped water, contained explosions, all while under continuous attack. Their training saved the ship. Second, maneuverability. Beckton never stopped moving, never presented a stable target. The constant course changes, speed variations, and evasive action made precision attacks nearly impossible. Many kamikazes missed because they were aiming at where Laffey had been, not where she was. Third, leadership. Beckton's unshakable calm transmitted to his crew. When men thought they were doomed, they looked at their captain and saw confidence, saw determination, saw a man who believed they would survive. And so they fought like they would survive. And so they did. The Navy designates Laffey's survival as a case study. Her damage control procedures become required teaching at naval training schools. Her battle is analyzed, dissected, used to train future generations of sailors in how to keep a ship alive when everything says it should die. But the Japanese, they don't understand at all. What the Japanese High Command didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that USS Laffey's survival fundamentally undermined the kamikaze strategy. The entire concept of the kamikaze depended on one assumption, that suicide attacks were unstoppable, that a pilot willing to die could always get through defenses, could always achieve a hit, could always sink his target. The mathematics supported this. 1 plane, 1 ship. The exchange rate favored Japan. Laffey proved the assumption was wrong. 9 hits, 9 kamikazes that achieved their objective, that did everything they were supposed to do. And the ship survived. Not barely survived. Survived well enough to steam back to port under her own power, get repaired, and return to combat within months. Think about what that means strategically. If one destroyer can absorb 9 kamikaze hits and survive, then the American fleet is far more resilient than Japan calculated. The exchange rate, pilots for ships, suddenly shifts dramatically in America's favor. Japan can't replace trained pilots. They can barely replace aircraft. But America is producing ships faster than Japan can sink them. The Battle of Okinawa casualties tell the story. Japan committed over 4,000 kamikaze sorties against the Allied fleet. They sank 36 ships, damaged over 300 more. But the invasion wasn't stopped. The fleet didn't withdraw. Every ship that was sunk was replaced. Every pilot that died was gone forever. At Imperial headquarters in Tokyo, analysts studied the reports from Okinawa and couldn't make the numbers work. The kamikaze was supposed to be a war-winning strategy, supposed to bleed the Americans so badly they'd negotiate peace rather than invade the home islands. But if ships like Laffey could survive 9 direct hits, if the Americans could absorb this level of punishment and keep fighting, then the strategy had already failed. What they didn't factor in was American industrial capacity, American damage control training, American willingness to accept casualties and keep pressing forward. The cultural assumption that Americans valued individual life so highly they'd quit when losses mounted was catastrophically wrong. Laffey's survival sent a message to every sailor in the Pacific Fleet. You can win this. You can survive. The kamikazes are terrifying, but they're not invincible. Fight hard enough, long enough, smart enough, and you'll make it home. And that message was worth more than 100 ships. Within the US Navy, Laffey's battle became legend. Her tactics were studied, adopted, distributed fleet-wide. The constant maneuvering, the ammunition distribution strategy, the damage control procedures, all became standard practice. Ships that followed Laffey's example had higher survival rates. Crews trained harder because they'd seen proof that training saved lives. The ripple effects extended beyond tactics. Laffey's survival bolstered morale across the fleet. Sailors who'd been terrified of kamikaze duty saw that it was possible to fight back, possible to survive. Fear remained. That never went away. But hopelessness diminished. And hope, in war, is a tactical advantage. By July 1945, kamikaze attacks were still dangerous, still deadly. But they were no longer psychologically devastating. American sailors had adapted. They'd learned to fight an enemy that didn't fear death, and they'd learned to win. The cost was high. Over 4,900 American sailors died from kamikaze attacks during the Battle of Okinawa. Thousands more were wounded. The psychological toll was immense. Survivors dealt with trauma for decades. But the invasion succeeded. Okinawa fell. The Americans established bases within striking distance of mainland Japan. And the kamikazes, despite their fanatical courage, despite their willingness to die, had failed to stop them. Laffey didn't win the Battle of Okinawa single-handedly, but she proved that the battle could be won. That American ships could endure punishment that should sink them and keep fighting. That the kamikaze, for all its terror, was not the war-winning weapon Japan desperately needed it to be. And proving that, demonstrating that the supposedly unstoppable tactic could be survived, could be defeated, was worth more than sinking enemy carriers. It was a psychological victory that resonated through the entire fleet. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, the kamikaze strategy had expended nearly 5,000 aircraft and pilots. They'd achieved a 7% hit rate, meaning 93% of kamikazes were destroyed before reaching their targets. And of the 7% that hit, many struck ships that survived were repaired and returned to action. The exchange rate that had looked favorable in Japanese planning room simulations, one plane for one ship, turned out to be catastrophically worse. More like 15 planes per ship sunk. And Japan ran out of planes, pilots, and fuel long before America ran out of ships. Laffey's survival was a microcosm of that larger strategic failure. Japan threw everything at her. 9 direct hits should have sunk her 5 times over. But she remained afloat, kept fighting, eventually steamed home and came back. If one ship could do that, the entire American fleet could endure. And that meant Japan had already lost. Commander Frederick Julian Beckton survived the war. He was awarded the Navy Cross for his actions on April 16, 1945, the nation's second highest decoration for combat valor. The citation mentioned his extraordinary heroism and inspiring leadership under the most adverse conditions. It didn't capture what he actually did, how he stood on the bridge for 80 minutes while kamikazes exploded around him, how his calm, steady voice held together a crew that should have broken, how his refusal to consider abandoning ship transmitted to 336 men, who then refused to quit. Beckton continued his naval career after the war, eventually retiring as a rear admiral. He rarely spoke about April 16th. When pressed, he'd deflect credit to his crew. "They did the fighting," he'd say. "They kept the ship alive. I just gave orders." But the crew members, the ones who survived, who came home, who built lives, remembered differently. They remembered a Susan captain who wouldn't abandon them, who believed they could survive when survival seemed impossible, who stayed calm when the world was exploding. Robert Carr, the 40mm gunner who'd destroyed the first kamikaze to hit Laffey, returned to Pennsylvania after the war. He worked as a machinist, raised a family, never talked much about the war. But he kept a photograph of Laffey on his workshop wall. When his grandchildren asked about it, he'd tell them, "That ship should have sunk. We all should have died. But our captain wouldn't let us quit, so we didn't." Lawrence Delovsky, the 20mm gunner who'd saved the bridge by destroying a kamikaze at point-blank range, came home to Shenandoah. He worked in the coal mines, married his childhood sweetheart, had 4 children. He suffered from what we now call PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, survivor's guilt. But he lived a full life, died at 82. At his funeral, his children found a box in his closet containing his Navy decorations and a single photograph. USS Laffey, battered but afloat, limping back to port. Aristides Futrides, who'd adjusted his fire to detonate the Judy's bomb before it hit the bridge, went back to Lynn, Massachusetts, became a teacher, taught high school history for 37 years. Every year, on April 16th, he'd tell his students about USS Laffey, about how ordinary people, when pushed beyond their limits, can accomplish extraordinary things. About how courage isn't the absence of fear, it's continuing to fight despite it. US Laffey herself was repaired, returned to service, and fought until the end of the war. After the war, she was decommissioned, then recommissioned during the Korean War. She served through the Cold War, finally retiring in 1975 after 30 years of service. Today, she's a museum ship at Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum in Charleston, South Carolina. You can walk her decks, stand where Beckton stood, see the repair, patches where kamikaze hits were sealed, touch the guns that fired continuously for 80 minutes. And if you're quiet, if you listen, you can almost hear the echoes of that April morning. The roar of engines, the thunder of guns, the voices of men who refused to surrender. The Navy designated Laffey the ship that would not die. The nickname stuck. It's accurate, but it misses the deeper truth. Laffey didn't survive because she was lucky. She survived because 336 men decided they would not let her die. would not let each other die, would fight until they couldn't fight anymore, and then keep fighting. 9 kamikaze hits, 4 bomb hits, 6 near misses, 350 separate pieces of shrapnel and bullet damage. By every logical calculation, she should rest on the bottom of the Pacific, another casualty of a brutal war. Instead, she floats in Charleston Harbor, a testament to what humans can endure when they refuse to quit. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm, this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. There are thousands of stories like this, acts of courage and sacrifice that deserve to be told. Help us make sure they aren't lost. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served. These stories connect us across generations. Your comments help build that bridge. Thank you for ensuring that Commander Frederick Julian Beckton and the 336 men of US Laffey do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.